A mother and daughter accused of killing their grandmother remain in jail. It's a gruesome story, one our Katie Barlow heard in court today. She's in Landover with the details.
On Hill Road in Hyattsville, Maryland, is where 44-year-old Candace Craig is accused of murdering her mother.
Welcome to Urban Crime Stories. In this episode, we will examine the most gruesome murder cases that you've never heard of. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so that you will not miss any upcoming episodes. On June 2nd, 2023, the serene family home of 71-year-old Margaret Craig in Landover, Maryland, became the center of a gruesome discovery. Police, responding to a welfare check, unearthed the dismembered remains of Margaret Craig in the basement, surrounded by evidence of a horrifying crime. The investigation revealed that her own daughter, 46-year-old Candace Craig, had killed her after a heated dispute, with her granddaughter Salia Hardy aiding in the cover-up. Margaret Craig, a vibrant 71-year-old woman, was cherished by her family, which included her daughter Candace Craig and her beloved granddaughter Salia Hardy. The three lived together in their family home in Landover, Maryland, where Margaret was a well-liked figure in the community, known for her friendly demeanor and generous spirit. Their family was often regarded as a happy one, with a close bond that was evident to all who knew them. On May 9th, 2021, Candace took to Facebook to share a heartfelt message in honor of her mother on Mother's Day. She celebrated Margaret as the most important woman in her life, wishing her an awesome and peaceful day while expressing her love, stating, "I love you very much to the moon and back." Salia echoed this sentiment in the comments, leaving a touching message of her own. "Happy Mother's Day, Grandma and Mommy." However, the family's happiness would soon be overshadowed by a tragic and unexpected turn of events. In June 2023, their lives took a devastating turn when police were called to the Craig residence on June 2nd, after a concerned 911 caller reported that they had not been able to communicate with Margaret for several days. The call raised alarms about Margaret's welfare, prompting authorities to respond quickly. Upon arrival, they were met by Candace, who answered the door and allowed the officers inside to conduct a welfare check. As the police conducted their search, they made their way to the basement, where a sickening odor filled the air. The unmistakable stench of decomposition prompted immediate concern among the officers, signaling that something had gone terribly wrong. This moment marked a pivotal point in the investigation, as the atmosphere shifted from a simple inquiry into a potential crime scene. The discovery in the basement would unveil a tragic narrative that would shake the family and the community to its core. Upon conducting a preliminary search of the residence, officers discovered chilling evidence that painted a grim picture of the events leading up to their arrival. In the basement, they observed a cover for a chainsaw, various cutting utensils, cleaning materials, and blood spatter throughout the area where the bags of human remains were located. The presence of these items heightened the sense of urgency among the investigators. Further examination led to the recovery of a chainsaw with human remains on it, a discovery that would prove pivotal in the ongoing investigation. As investigators delved deeper into the case, police evidence and interviews indicated that Margaret Craig had been killed on May 23rd, 2023. Just days before the alarming 911 call was made. Reports suggested that Salia Hardy, the granddaughter, played a role in the subsequent attempts to dispose of the remains. This revelation added a layer of complexity to the already tragic narrative, indicating that the family's bond was shattered by a horrific crime that unfolded in secrecy. The timeline of events took another disturbing turn on May 27, 2023, when the same neighbor who had initially called 911 for a welfare check witnessed a fire in the brush near the Craig home on Hill Road. The neighbor observed Candace Craig and Salia Hardy in the woods, engaged in the act of burning what appeared to be human remains. This shocking sight prompted immediate concern, and the neighbor reported the incident to the authorities, leading to the swift mobilization of police to investigate further. The disturbing details continued to emerge as investigators pieced together the narrative of what transpired within the Craig household. The actions of Candace and Hardy not only raised alarms about their potential involvement in the crime, but also prompted questions about the motivations behind such a horrific act. The community, already reeling from the news of Margaret's death, grappled with the grim reality that the very family they had known and admired was now at the center of a murder investigation. While speaking to police, Salia provided a disturbing account of the events that led to her grandmother's tragic death. She claimed to have overheard her grandmother, Margaret Craig, threatening to report Candace to the authorities for the fraudulent use of her credit card. This revelation painted a troubling picture of escalating tension within the household, suggesting that financial disputes may have been a catalyst for the violence. Salia reported that shortly after this threat, Candace attacked Margaret, leading to a confrontation that would end in tragedy. The following day, Salia discovered her grandmother's remains hidden in a blue bin located in a bedroom. In a shocking turn of events, Salia and her mother Candace took drastic measures to dismember Margaret's body, employing a chainsaw in their gruesome effort to conceal the crime. They attempted to burn her remains on a barbecue grill and in a fire set in the back of their residence, a desperate act that occurred just 4 days after Margaret's death. It was clear that the urgency to dispose of the remains intensified as the stench of decomposition became unbearable, pushing them to resort to extreme measures to avoid detection. The investigation into Margaret's death revealed the horrific lengths to which her family went to cover up their crime. However, the cause of her death remained shrouded in mystery, primarily due to the deplorable condition of her body. The severity of the dismemberment and the time elapsed since her death complicated the forensic examination, making it difficult to determine whether she had been stabbed, suffocated, or suffered a fatal blow to the head. Despite the efforts of investigators, lingering suspicions and unanswered questions surrounded the circumstances of Margaret's demise. As detectives continued to unravel the disturbing details of the case, the shocking nature of the crime left the community in disbelief. A family that had once been admired for their close-knit relationships was now at the center of a chilling murder investigation, revealing a darker side that had remained hidden from view. The narrative of love and familial bonds had been irrevocably altered, replaced by a story of betrayal and violence. Candace Craig was formally charged with both first- and second-degree murder, while her daughter, Salia Hardy, was charged as an accessory after the fact. Both women are currently in the custody of the Maryland Department of Corrections, where they await the next steps in their legal proceedings. The gravity of the charges reflects the horrific nature of the crime and the shocking betrayal of a family member against their matriarch. In a recent update to the case, the Office of the State's Attorney for Prince George's County announced that jury selection for Candace Craig's trial commenced on October 23, 2024. The anticipation surrounding the trial has captured the attention of the community, eager for answers about the events that led to Margaret's tragic death. The trial is expected to unveil the complexities of the family dynamics that spiraled into violence, and the courtroom will serve as a stage for both sides to present their narratives. Opening arguments are scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Thursday, October 24th. As the trial approaches, emotions run high for the family, friends, and community members who knew Margaret Craig. The prosecution will likely present a case that outlines the shocking circumstances surrounding her death, while the defense may seek to highlight any mitigating factors or challenge the evidence against Candace and Salia. Next, the tragic story of 5-year-old Cairo Jordan.
Now to our top stories. New details today about the case of the little boy's body found in a suitcase in rural Washington County, Indiana. Indiana State Police announcing Cairo Jordan was the boy found back in April.
In April 2022, the body of 5-year-old Cairo Jordan was found in a suitcase in rural Indiana, sparking a disturbing investigation. His mother, Dejaune Anderson, believed her son was possessed by a demon. After being on the run, she was arrested in 2024, alongside her accomplice, Coleman. The tragic case reveals a young life lost to a mother's dangerous delusions. Cairo Jordan was born on January 12, 2017, to his mother, Dejaune Anderson. From the very beginning, Cairo was a source of joy to everyone around him. He was often described as a vibrant, happy baby, full of life and energy. His bright personality and wide, infectious smile made him the center of attention wherever he went. Living in Louisville, Kentucky, Cairo shared a home with his mother, Dejaune, and another woman named Dawn Coleman, who had been staying with the family for some time. Coleman, originally from Louisiana, had become a part of their lives, and together they formed a small, close-knit household. On April 16, 2022, Cairo's life took an unimaginable and tragic turn. That day, a mushroom hunter wandering through a remote wooded area in Washington County, Indiana, stumbled across something that would forever change the course of an innocent child's story. The hunter discovered an abandoned suitcase lying in the underbrush. Concerned by the unusual find, the hunter immediately contacted the authorities. What the police uncovered when they arrived was both shocking and heartbreaking. A young boy's body was inside the suitcase. The discovery sent waves of shock through the community as investigators began to piece together the mystery of what had happened. In the days and weeks following the discovery, law enforcement worked around the clock to try to identify the child. The condition of the body and the location where it was found made the investigation challenging. As forensic teams combed through evidence, the boy remained nameless and unidentified, his tragic end a heartbreaking mystery. Despite the intense efforts of investigators, nearly 6 months passed without any leads that could confirm the child's identity or provide answers about how he ended up abandoned in the woods, far from anyone who could protect him. Finally, in late 2022, after months of relentless investigation, the police made a breakthrough. Through a combination of forensic evidence and investigative leads, they were able to identify the boy found in the suitcase. It was a devastating confirmation. The body belonged to 5-year-old Cairo Jordan.
Identify the young man that was found in the suitcase. He was Cairo Jordan.
The revelation brought a name and a story to the once nameless child, but it also deepened the sorrow and raised even more questions. How did this bright, joyful boy, so loved by those who knew him, end up abandoned and alone in such horrific circumstances? The autopsy results revealed that Cairo had likely died due to an electrolyte imbalance caused by a virus that led to severe vomiting, diarrhea, and dehydration. While the exact circumstances of how the virus led to his death remain unclear, the medical findings suggested that Cairo had suffered greatly in his final days. The devastating news only added to the complexity of the case. Dawn Coleman, who had been living with Cairo and his mother, Dejaune Anderson, was arrested in October 2023, bringing a significant development in the investigation into Cairo's tragic death. In November 2023, Coleman took a plea deal, pleading guilty to multiple charges including aiding, inducing or causing murder, neglect of a dependent resulting in death, and obstruction of justice. As part of the deal, she agreed to serve 25 years in prison with 5 years of probation. Coleman will also receive credit for 1.5 years of time already served while awaiting trial. This agreement allowed her to avoid a potentially harsher sentence, but her plea also came with a significant condition. She must testify against Dejaune Anderson in any future criminal proceedings related to Cairo's death. Cairo's mother, Dejaune, who was 38 years old at the time, has been on the run since her son's body was discovered in April 2022. Her disappearance has been a critical obstacle in the case, preventing full closure and justice for Cairo. Investigators believe that Dejaune played a central role in her son's death, with Dawn Coleman providing critical details that implicated her. According to Coleman, she had walked into a bedroom of their Louisville home and found Anderson on top of Cairo, who was lying face down on the mattress. The chilling statement from Dawn to investigators, "It was already done," painted a grim picture of what had occurred. Following Cairo's death, Dawn confessed that she assisted Dejaune in disposing of her son's body. The two women placed Cairo's lifeless body in a hard-sided suitcase bearing a Las Vegas label. They then drove across state lines, crossing the Ohio River into Washington County, Indiana, where they abandoned the suitcase in a secluded wooded area. This heart-wrenching act marked the final steps of a horrifying ordeal that had begun with the suffering of a little boy and ended with the cruel disposal of his remains. With Dawn Coleman now behind bars and cooperating with authorities, the focus remains on finding Dejaune, who has managed to evade capture for over a year. Dawn's testimony is expected to play a pivotal role in any future criminal cases against Dejaune Anderson, should she be apprehended. Meanwhile, the community continues to grapple with the senseless death of Cairo Jordan, a young life taken far too soon, and justice delayed as those responsible are brought to account for their actions. Dejaune had a disturbing online presence that raised significant concerns long before the tragic events unfolded. She frequently posted on social media about rituals, magic, and the concept of raising her spiritual frequency. In these posts, she expressed bizarre and alarming beliefs, including claims that a 100-year-old demon was living inside her son. She suggested that demons were using children as avatars, which many found troubling and indicative of a profound disconnect from reality. Dawn Coleman, the woman who had been living with Anderson in Cairo, also had a controversial presence on social media. She described herself as a healer and was known for going live almost daily to offer paid spiritual readings to her followers. Coleman claimed to possess the ability to communicate with viewers' ancestors, a practice that attracted a following, but also raised eyebrows among those aware of the unfolding situation with Cairo. The combination of their beliefs and actions hinted at a deeply troubled environment that may have contributed to the tragic fate of the young boy. In a chilling turn of events, just days before Cairo's body was discovered, Dejaune Anderson attempted to contact an Indiana priest to arrange for an exorcism on Cairo. This troubling request not only reflected her disturbing mindset, but also underscored the severity of the situation surrounding Cairo's well-being. On March 14, 2024, Dejaune Anderson was finally arrested by U.S. Marshals as she tried to board a public transport train, marking a significant breakthrough in the case. Her capture came without incident, but it confirmed her status as the second woman arrested in connection with Cairo's death. Dejaune faces serious charges of murder, neglect of a dependent resulting in death, and obstruction of justice. Authorities' aim is to continue the investigation and gather any additional evidence or testimony that could shed light on the events that transpired before Cairo's death. Dejaune was extradited back to Indiana for trial. The timeline for this extradition remains uncertain, adding another layer of complexity to a case that has already captivated the public's attention. In August 2024, during the proceedings related to Dejaune Anderson, Judge Larry Medlock ruled that she could not represent herself in court and would instead be taken to a psychiatric facility. Dejaune had been adamant for months about her desire to defend herself against the serious charges she faced. However, Judge Medlock determined that Dejaune's mental state needed further examination, prompting a request for 2 psychiatric evaluations to assess her competency to stand trial. Despite her persistent protests against the decision, medical professionals submitted completed competency reports by July. The findings from both evaluations indicated that Anderson was not currently competent to stand trial or assist in her defense. This assessment led to a recommendation for her commitment to the Indiana Department of Mental Health and Addiction, with the goal of finding appropriate placement in a state hospital facility for mental health treatment. After reviewing the evaluations, Judge Medlock agreed with the doctor's recommendations, prioritizing Dejaune's mental health needs. Dejaune was expected to appear in court on August 22, 2024. However, a court official later announced that all future hearings had been canceled. This included her trial, which had been slated to commence in October 2024. The abrupt cancellation of these hearings sent ripples through the community and the legal system, as many had been closely following the case. The decision underscored the complex interplay between mental health and the judicial process, particularly in cases involving severe criminal charges. As the situation stands, the hearings will be rescheduled once Dejaune completes her mental health treatment and is deemed competent to stand trial. This development adds another layer of uncertainty to a case that has already captured significant public attention, as many await clarity on when justice for Cairo Jordan might be served. The focus on Dejaune's mental health has raised important questions about accountability, the legal system's responsibility to ensure fair trials, and the need for comprehensive mental health care for individuals involved in the criminal justice system. Meanwhile, in a Salem, Indiana cemetery, the grave of little Cairo Jordan stands adorned with flowers and mementos, a somber tribute to a young life lost too soon. The peaceful setting of the grave offers a stark contrast to the tumultuous circumstances of his death and the chaos that surrounded his family. The community mourns the loss of this joyful child, reflecting on the heartbreak that unfolded within their midst. The disturbing case of Cheyenne Jessie. On August 1, 2015, police responded to Cheyenne Jessie's report of her father and daughter missing. What they uncovered was far worse. Her father and 6-year-old daughter were found murdered and hidden in storage bins.
A mother is suspected of killing her father and 6-year-old daughter. As Jake Peterson reports, the investigation started when she filled out a missing persons report.
The mother, Cheyenne Jessie, reported the two missing to deputies yesterday morning. She said maybe they were in Georgia. Turns out they weren't in Georgia. They were just about a half-mile down the road at the landlord's house.
Cheyenne later confessed to the killings, driven by a desperate desire to be with her boyfriend, unraveling a tragic and shocking case. Cheyenne Jessie, born in 1990 in Florida, endured a deeply troubled childhood that would shape the course of her life. Her early years were marred by severe physical and sexual abuse while she was living with her mother. At just 4 years old, authorities intervened, removing her from her mother's custody and placing her in the care of her father, Mark Ivan Weekly. Though this change brought some stability, the trauma of her early abuse left permanent scars. Over the years, these experiences contributed to Cheyenne developing significant mental health challenges, including bipolar disorder. While the specifics of the abuse she suffered are not widely known, the impact it had on her mental and emotional well-being was profound. By the time Cheyenne turned 25, she had already assumed the heavy responsibility of raising her daughter, 6-year-old Meredith Jessie, on her own. Life as a single mother was far from easy, particularly because Meredith had extreme behavioral issues that placed additional pressure on Cheyenne. At one point, Meredith's struggles became so severe that she required inpatient psychiatric care to manage her condition. Balancing her daughter's needs with her own mental health issues created a stressful and overwhelming environment for Cheyenne, who was left to manage these challenges largely on her own. At the time, Cheyenne was also in a relationship with Matthew Monroe, also known as Cody. However, their relationship was growing increasingly strained. Cody, frustrated by the situation, particularly Meredith's behavioral problems, expressed a desire to end the relationship. The stress of the possible breakup weighed heavily on Cheyenne, who was already overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood and her personal struggles. Cody's intention to leave added to her emotional burden, intensifying the feelings of isolation and instability she was already experiencing. As the pressure mounted, Cheyenne's life took an unexpected and tragic turn in August 2015. Under the strain of her unresolved childhood trauma, her ongoing mental health battles, and the potential collapse of her relationship, something snapped. What followed was an unimaginable and devastating act, one that would leave a permanent mark on the lives of all those around her. This event sent shockwaves through her community, as people struggled to comprehend how a woman who had faced so much hardship could end up committing such an act. On the morning of Saturday, August 1, 2015, Cheyenne Jessie contacted the police to report that her 50-year-old father, Mark Ivan Weekly, and her 6-year-old daughter, Meredith Jessie, were missing. When authorities arrived at Cheyenne's home to investigate the report, they were immediately struck by a strong, foul odor coming from the property. Cheyenne tried to explain it away, attributing the smell to a dead raccoon, but her explanation did little to alleviate the growing suspicions of the officers on the scene. As the investigation progressed, police began to notice discrepancies in Cheyenne's story, prompting them to consider the possibility that she was involved in the disappearance of her family members. A few days into the investigation, the police made a gruesome discovery. The bodies of Mark Weekly and 6-year-old Meredith Jessie were found stuffed into bags and placed in a storage shed located about 200 feet from the family home. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, but the horror did not end there. When the police searched Cheyenne's house, they found additional evidence of violence, including blood-stained furniture and rugs, leading them to believe that the murders had taken place inside the home. As the investigation continued, it became clear that the events surrounding the disappearance were far more sinister than initially suspected. Authorities alleged that Cheyenne killed her father and daughter in a brutal act, so she could be free to pursue a new relationship with her boyfriend. Further evidence seemed to point toward a calculated cover-up. After Mark Weekly had already been killed, someone used his phone to send text messages to Cheyenne's boyfriend. The messages, written by someone pretending to be Mark, stated that he only had a year to live and wanted to spend that time with his granddaughter, Meredith. The texts even gave Cheyenne and her boyfriend permission to take over Mark's house, effectively trying to remove any obstacles to Cheyenne's new relationship. This led investigators to believe that Cheyenne was desperately trying to preserve her relationship by eliminating what she saw as the two major barriers in her life, her father and her daughter. As the investigation deepened, Cheyenne shifted her story, claiming she had killed both her father and daughter in self-defense. She alleged that her father had attacked her with a knife, and that in the process of defending herself, she had accidentally stabbed Meredith. According to her version of events, she managed to wrestle the knife away from her father while he was slashing at her, but during the struggle, her daughter was slashed in the throat and bled to death. However, investigators quickly dismissed this version of events, as none of the physical evidence supported Cheyenne's claim. The discovery of the bodies, coupled with the blood evidence inside the house, pointed to premeditated murder rather than self-defense. Ultimately, Cheyenne Jesse was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of tampering with evidence. Despite the mounting evidence against her, she had yet to formally enter a plea and had not hired an attorney at the time of her arrest. She was held without bond in the Polk County Jail, awaiting trial. The shocking case left many questioning how a mother could commit such a heinous act, all seemingly driven by a desire to preserve a relationship at the expense of her own family's lives. As the investigation into the murders continued, the details of the violent deaths of Mark Weekly and Meredith Jesse became even more disturbing. Forensic evidence revealed that Mark had been stabbed at least 12 times and shot in the head 3 times, while young Meredith had been repeatedly stabbed and shot in the back of the head. Investigators determined that the murders likely occurred on July 18, 2015, the last day both victims were seen alive by friends of Mark. After killing her father and daughter, Cheyenne Jesse placed their bodies in plastic storage bins and hid them in a shed in their landlord's backyard next door. The bodies remained there for nearly 2 weeks, decomposing in the hot Florida summer until they were discovered by authorities in early August. In 2021, Cheyenne, now 31 years old, confessed to the murders, admitting that she had killed both her father and daughter back in 2015. However, the case took a dramatic turn during her trial. Cheyenne, sitting in the jury box, was heard mumbling something and kept her face hidden throughout the proceedings. A court bailiff later revealed that she was attempting to tell the judge that she did not commit the murders. Her defense attorneys argued that it was not Jesse who committed the crimes, but rather her boyfriend, Cody. According to their version of events, Jesse had confessed out of fear of Cody, who they claimed was the real perpetrator of the brutal killings. During the trial, it became clear that no woman from Polk County had ever been sentenced to death. Despite this, the severity of the crime, particularly the murder of Meredith, a defenseless 6-year-old, led the jury to recommend the death penalty for Jesse. The jury also recommended a life sentence for the murder of her father, Mark Weekly. These recommendations highlighted the gravity of Jesse's actions and the profound impact they had on both her family and the community at large. However, when it came time for sentencing, the courtroom was nearly empty. On that Friday, only a small group of people were present: the judge and his assistant, Cheyenne's 2 attorneys, 2 state attorneys, several court bailiffs, and a court reporter. Strikingly, no one from Cheyenne's family, Weekly's family, or Meredith's father's family attended the hearing. The lack of family presence underscored the loneliness and isolation surrounding the case, as well as the tragic fallout of Cheyenne's actions. In the end, Cheyenne's mental health issues were taken into consideration during sentencing. Although the jury had recommended the death penalty for the murder of her daughter, Meredith, the judge opted instead for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Florida's laws regarding life sentences are strict, leaving no room for parole in cases like Cheyenne's. As a result, Cheyenne Jesse was sentenced to life in prison, ensuring that she would spend the rest of her days behind bars for the brutal murders of her father and daughter. Thank you for watching this episode of Urban Crime Stories. Please let us know your thoughts about these tragic stories in the comments below. Remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications for upcoming crime stories. Your support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I will see you with another episode of Urban Crime Stories.